Old guy here. It is week something or other of the killer virus quarantine. The streets have turned into road warrior. I've already selected which of my neighbors I'm going to eat. I'll tell you what, I think that we're getting a little excited about basically a bad cold. When jaywalking has a greater mortality rate than this, you know, the World War II veterans still left alive, the Korean War veterans, and we Vietnam veterans are looking at all of you and going, come on. At any rate, by this time, huddled away in your dungeon-like basement, which is where I am, you've probably gone through every single book of the New York Times bestseller list and have realized that every single one of them is exactly like every other one on the list, just to change a title and author, making you suspect that the New York publishing world, or the entire publishing world, is selecting books based on the tastes of the people living on the west side of New York only. And you're getting a little desperate for something to read, and we're starting to delve back into time for things that are readable. Well, may I present then this one, Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy, the Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars. It's thousands of pages long. It's going to take you probably at least a week or two to finish. Not the 20 years or so that it took me, because I first picked this up back when it was first published, back, I think, what, 92, 93, when the first book came out, and I tried to read it and just couldn't. Something about the first chapter where a very important character is snuffed threw me off, and I went, well, I don't know, I don't think I can read this now. So I picked it up again about 3 or 4 months ago because, you know, quarantine, something to do. And this time I said, by God, I'm going to finish this thing, and by God I did, and I'm glad I did, because it's different than what I thought it was. Now, this is what everybody thinks it is. Yes, Terraforming Mars. That's what the whole story is about. Is this game, which, don't let the shrink wrap fool you. I have played this game at a couple of conventions and really enjoy it. It's great. It's a lot of fun. Takes a long time and can be very, very detailed, just like this novel. And you may think one has something to do with the other, but no. The trilogies predate the game. In fact, I'm sure the game has a lot of, you know, things that it owes to the trilogy. And it's not just simply about making Mars a livable place. So what is the trilogy about? Well, it's about the first 100 colonists sent to Mars from Earth. Highlighting about 10 or 15 of them to follow along through all three trilogies over about 200 years of time. What's that? How the devil can you follow the same person for 200 years? Well, that's because Mars, as the book progresses, Mars science has figured out a way to increase longevity. And Mars science is much more pure and wonderful than Earth science for some reason I can't figure out. And Earth is evil, and they take the longevity treatments that the Martians have, and it turns into this big political fight and overpopulation and famine and who's going to live and who isn't. And Mars, of course, remains pure and wonderful because, you know, it just is. It's Mars. So you follow these first 100 right from the beginning of the first book, Red Mars, all the way through to the end. And again, there's about 10 or 15 that are focused on, and you do change viewpoint a lot from one character to another character, and you will pick your favorites. I'm not really sure who was my true favorite. I would say it's Saxifrage is his name. He's the guy who's just so literal and scientific minded that he can't even see human beings anymore. But he manages to stay through the whole book, and I like his perspective. So what these three novels are about is pretty much a political and economic and sociological and psychological series of conflicts between the various factions that are found not only among these first 100, but back on Earth. Needless to say, conflict ensues, including murders and hatreds and downright revolutions against Earth when Mars decides that it's going to be free of Earth's influence, and there's like 2 revolutions. Because what the revolutionaries had not quite figured out, when you live on Mars, it's pretty easy for Earth to come down and pop the little bubble over your city, and, well, can't live too long on Mars. Which is one of the big pushes behind the idea of terraforming Mars, not only to turn it into a place where you can walk around, but also because Earth can't do that anymore. And there's space elevators, and there's all kinds of great things that are built, and these gigantic robots that can mine, and all these weird attempts to change the atmosphere of Mars, including nukes detonated in underneath the planet, and craziness. So thousands of pages of this, thousands more than you probably need, because Kim Stanley Robinson loves his sidebars. My goodness, you are going to go off on 10 to 20 to 50 pages of things that you just probably don't even really care that much about, such as lichens and fungus and their function in the environment. And it goes on and on and on, and you sit there and go, dude, please, back to the story. In fact, in the middle of Green Mars, there is this political conference that I swear is the Simpsons version of the Phantom Menace Galactic Senate Conference. It's just, well, you have to read it to see. And I do recommend you read these 3 novels and read them straight together to kill a couple weeks, because there comes a point about in the middle of Green Mars where you realize something else is going on. That we are not just here on Mars, we are moving along, actually evolving. And I believe that that is the actual point of these novels, about how we can grow as a species, as humanity, the more that we go further out. And I tell you, it's a pretty marvelous thing when you get to that realization. So, old guy here, hunkering down in his basement, sharpening knives, looking at the neighbors. Take care.